Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I want to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Tiana Wilder. She's from Sumter, North Carolina. She attended Cleveland University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and for her undergrad degree, she is currently a second-year student at North Carolina A&T's English and African American Literature program. In the summer of 2021, she participated in the University of Iowa's IWP Summer Institute. Her research interests include Black feminism and pop culture.
Good evening, y'all. Like Brianna said, my name is Tiana, and today I'll be presenting to you my project, Keeping It Real, Push, and Hip Hop Feminism. So last semester, I read Push for a class, and at the same time, I was starting to get into hip hop feminism, and I started reading When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost by Joan Morgan, and I was noticing that there was a lot of common elements between the two works. And so I came to the conclusion that even though Push was written about 3 years before When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost was published, I felt like it was undeniably a hip hop feminist novel. And the elements that I saw these connections through was through the use of community within the novel, self-definition, and the way that Sapphire portrayed the complicated nature of personal growth. So just before we get into everything, I just want to provide some background information. So if you don't know what Push is, it is a novel by Sapphire that was published in 1996. And it follows a young girl named Clarice Precious Jones as she tries to reconcile with her trauma and abuse in 1980s Harlem. This book was later made into a movie in 2009 called Precious. And then in 2011, Sapphire wrote a sequel to the novel called The Kid. And so, what is hip hop? I know that for a lot of us, when we think about hip hop, we think about the musical genre. So we think about Jay-Z, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, people of that nature. But for hip hop scholars and for hip hop feminists especially, it's more than just the musical genre. In the article, What It Do Shawty, Women, Hip Hop, and a Feminist Agenda, hip hop is defined as a cultural phenomenon that not only includes the rap music and the graffiti, but film, activism, and spoken word as well. Additionally, in the article entitled Planet B Girl, Community Building and Feminism in Hip Hop is a set of values that can foster political and personal change that can lead to peace, love, and justice for all. So for these hip hop feminists, hip hop is more than just the music. It is pretty much a way of life. And so that's really essential to understanding hip hop feminism. Hip hop feminism is an offshoot of Black feminism. If you don't want to know what Black feminism is, it is a feminism that came about in response to mainstream feminism having lots of gaps because it focused on mainly white, upper middle class women. And so hip hop feminism is akin to Black feminism in that it focuses on that, but it also acknowledges the role of hip hop in the Black community as this really important socio-political, cultural, and personal tenet. Additionally, it recognizes that there's lots of issues within the hip hop scene, for example, the misogyny and the colorism that goes on in there. And so they kind of play with the question of, can I be feminist and, still listen to these rappers calling women, these derogatory terms and things of that nature. And so that's what they kind of wrestle with. Additionally, it also looks at the hypocrisy that occurs not only in the hip hop scenes, but in the feminist scenes as well. And so I will be using the term crunk feminism, and that is just an evolution of hip hop feminism. And so you can kind of view it as a timeline almost. So Black feminism, then hip hop feminism, and then crunk feminism. And it's just for the generation of hip hop feminists that came up after the initial hip hop boom of the 90s and early 2000s. And so Push in hip hop feminism. As I stated, when I did my research, I touched on the community aspects, the complicated nature of personal growth, which I also refer to in my paper as the grays, and then self-definition, which I also refer to in my paper as this idea of rejecting the narrative. But just for today, we're just going to focus on the community and the self-definition aspects. And so community first. So community plays a really big role in Push. At the beginning of the novel, Precious is very not confident at all. She sees herself as this very invisible figure. She doesn't see any hope for the future, and I felt like the quote on page 31 in Push really showed this. It reads, "I beg, I talk, I eats, I cooks, I laugh, I watch TV, do what my mother say. But I can see when the picture come back, I don't exist. Don't nobody want me, don't nobody need me. I know who I am, I know who they say I am. Vampire sucking the system's blood. Ugly black griefs to be wiped away, punished, killed, changed, find a job for." And so early within the novel, one can see that Precious has this very negative view of herself. She sees herself as invisible. And not only that, but she's internalizing some of the negative images, specifically of black women who are on welfare and who are poor. She's internalizing that idea that they are monsters, that they are vampires, and that they are harming people and harming society in general. But this all changes when she enters the Each One Teach One program. So once she enters this space where she's able to form a community with Miss Rain and her classmates, she starts to love herself more, and she starts to be more confident and more have more direction within her life. And so later within the novel, on page 76, she says, "I love me. I ain't gonna let my mother kick my ass and shout on me. And I ain't giving Abdul away, and I ain't gonna stop school." So now we have a very determined Precious who has been built up by her community and by the relationships that she has formed within the community. And this is a very important tenet in hip hop feminism as well. Like how Sapphire shows in Push, community can be this engaging and wonderful thing that can build up your self-confidence, hip hop feminism believes in the same thing. In Joan Morgan's When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, she says that when engaging in commune, one is able to be vulnerable about their reality and come up with solutions to solve the problems within it. And so with the quote from 76, with this part of the novel, this chapter specifically, Precious has been kicked out of the house and her mother has thrown her out onto the streets and she has nowhere to go. But she's able to admit this in the classroom. And so Miss Rain and her fellow classmates are able to come together and find a space for her to stay in. So she ends up going to a halfway house so she has a roof over her head and she's able to keep Abdul and continue to go to school. Additionally, in the Crunk Feminist collection, in an essay entitled Beauty Parlor Politics, it states that for me, hair salons are bonding spaces. It is a safe space for social critique and casual conversation, a place where women gather together in one place, unseparated by their differences. And this is, again, very similar to Each One Teach One. There are many different types of girls within the classroom. There is Jermaine, who is a lesbian. There is Rhonda, who is from Jamaica. Her family owns like a Jamaican restaurant, and she's from like the Queens side of New York. And so there's different girls within the classroom, and despite their differences, they're all able to come together and bond and form a really good community. And so rejecting the narrative. So within Push, Precious kind of understands that there's this narrative being pushed onto her even early within the novel. For example, here on page 30, it reads, "There has always been something wrong with the test. The test paint a picture of me with no brain. The test paint a picture of me and my mother, my whole family. We dumb, we more than dumb, we invisible." And so Precious already knows that the system is kind of working against her, painting this image of her as being dumb, being stupid, but she's not able to fight against that. In that same chapter, she even acknowledges like that her mother continues to call her stupid, but she isn't able to verbalize like, "Hey, I'm not stupid. I don't know why you keep calling me this." And so again, this is where Each One Teach One comes in. They start to build up her self-confidence, build up her self-worth, and she's able to start rejecting this narrative that's being pushed onto her. So in this part of the novel where this quote comes from, this is after Precious is in the halfway house and she gains a counselor, Miss Wise, who is kind of helping her work through her trauma and work through what she's been going through for these past few years. And she notices that she has been keeping a notebook on her and just writing down all these notes. And so Precious wants to see what's in the notebook. And she discovers that Miss Wise wants her to become a home attendant instead of actually finishing up school and going on to get her college degree. And this upsets her completely. She ends up going on this whole rant, and it's great. But here on page 121, she says, "Miss Wise, fuck her. I don't need her if all she see from me is wiping old white people's asses. I ain't been going through all this learning to read and write, so I be no motherfucking home attendant." So you see, Precious is very determined to not let Miss Wise push this narrative on her that she should just go right into the workforce. She wants to continue her education and continue to build on the scholarship that she has learned in Each One Teach One. And this is similar to, of course, hip-hop feminism. Hip-hop feminism is all about rejecting the narrative that is being pushed onto Black women. In Chickenhead specifically, Morgan notes that she noticed a big problem with victimhood coming up within Black feminist circles. They were often pushing this narrative that women in the hip-hop space were being victims when they were actually participating in their own objectification. And so she notes on page 56 that she wanted a feminism that would allow me to explore who we are as women, not as victims. She wanted to acknowledge these women being complicit in their objectification instead of just saying, oh no, they're being harmed by this rap music. Additionally, in an article written by Gwendolyn Powell, she writes about rapper Jean Grey, and she states that Jean Grey is quick to stop interviews who want to label her as the anti-Lil' Kim, anti-Foxy Brown, or anti-Trina. She does not have a problem with her fellow female rappers. She has a problem with an industry that won't allow for a fullness of Black womanhood to be represented. And so here, Jean Grey is fighting against the narrative that is trying to pit her against other female rappers. She doesn't want to be seen as their enemy. She just wants them to acknowledge, like, hey, they're expressing their sexuality freely. I'm expressing my personality freely, and they can do that and not have to be in conflict with me. And so push hip-hop feminism in today. The reason why I pretty much wrote this paper is because I saw them as being very important and still affecting everything today. Specifically, I saw like push in hip-hop feminism not only pushing a narrative of hope, but also kind of leading this era of vulnerability that we're currently seeing within the hip-hop scene, specifically with rappers, especially female rappers like Megan Thee Stallion, Chica, Doechii. They're all very vulnerable in their music and open about their mental health struggles and things of that nature. Additionally, I also saw them as being accessible. I had never read Push until I got into this program here, and I was very surprised because Push is a very accessible novel. It's not like it's anything heavy, it's not like it's anything, well, it is heavy if you read it, but it's not like it's difficult language for you to grasp. You can read it, anybody can read it, and connect with Precious's struggles throughout the novel. And the same thing with hip-hop feminism. Joan Morgan's work is very, very casual. She makes so many pop culture references. She even writes this amazing list where she goes on about the grades that she wants to debate about, and it's just, the way she writes is just so cute because it's almost like a love letter to hip hop. And so she calls hip hop her boo, her bae. Like it's a lovely like little letter. And it just makes me wonder, like, why aren't we incorporating this into the classroom when both of these works are so accessible? And so I just think that it's important to bring attention to both this novel and this movement because they could really be used to bring change and make everything better. And so, yeah, that was my presentation. This is my contact information. I have a LinkedIn. I don't know how to log in. I'm gonna be honest, I lost the password. So email me, please, if you wanna just get more information about this presentation or any other research I've done.
Yes, thank you so much. And you all, I am asking everybody to please give my dear sister slash daughter slash peer another round of applause. Tiana and I, along with some others here, are in the African American Literature program at North Carolina A&T. I apologize for having my back to you, but I am going to avail myself of gravity so that I can put these phone boards up. And here we go. I grew up in the age of MacGyver, so I know how to make things work. Didn't need a tripod because I can figure one out. So I'm going to introduce myself, and Brianna is our classmate as well. She did a wonderful job of introducing Tiana. And I am Mrs. John Olin Johnson. Again, I am a proud student in the African American and English Literature program at North Carolina A&T. Master's program. This is my second master's. My first one was in school administration, and I was a high school principal for about 10 years, and then I woke up and decided to go to the community college, and I am an associate professor of English at Sandhills Community College in Pinehurst, North Carolina. This is gladly yet sadly, very ambivalently, my last semester at North Carolina A&T, and I can say that things typically end the way they begin because my beginning started with this lovely lady here, Dr. Pauline Uwakwe. Would you please stand so we can give you your applause and flowers? This was one of the first classes that I took along with my fellow cohort members at North Carolina A&T. It was Black Women Writers of the African Diaspora, and we learned a wealth of information. I'm still chewing on it and will be for probably forever. So thank you so much. And her support here today is just has my heart. So thank you so much, Dr. Uwakwe. You have our heart, and thank you for your support. As you see on your program, I am talking about barking up the tree of Elvis Presley and the Black woman behind the young white man. And this is something that I taught because before I was a high school principal, I was a high school teacher, journalism and English. And I saw, that was late 90s, early 2000s, and I saw a lack of representation in the textbook. So I found my own. And one of the short stories that I found was Alice Walker's 1955. And this is the PDF version of it, about 6.5, 7 pages. And it basically chronicles the history of Elvis Presley and his influence by the Black women of the blues / rock and roll, I'd even say early R&B era. And I do know that there's a movie, no spoilers please, because I've not seen it yet. I am eager to see it because with the trailers that I've seen and the clips that I've seen, I believe it does some justice to Elvis giving the propers where they're due for his influence of his music with the Black female artists. And in the story, Alice Walker does an amazing job. If you all know her, she's a wonderful writer anyway, so amazing is an understatement for her. But she does an amazing job of putting her own spin on the character analysis. And she uses literary elements of allusion, symbolism, and of course, major character analysis to fill in the details of the story. Now, what I'll tell you all is when you're looking for peer-reviewed articles, when you're looking for research for Alice Walker's 1955, you're not going to find much. You're not going to find much, which is why the movie coming out and the new details emerging where there has been a very appropriate and very credible link between Elvis Presley and the Black women that influenced him, it gives me pause to say thank you, because as this says here, women are being rewritten or written into history. And that's a major deal. This poster sort of has us on the cusp of the end of Black History Month, but the beginning of Women's History Month. Mm-hmm. So it's like an infusion of the two. But with Alice Walker, the story, instead of being part 1, part 2, part 3, she she breaks the story up into years. Of course, it's called 1955 because we know that's pretty much when Elvis came on the scene. But then she goes into 1956. Then she goes into 1960, then 1968. And while this is a short story, it's also very historical. It parallels history. Of course, she talks about the assassination of RFK, Dr. Martin Luther King, and all of those historical high points were chronicled during Elvis's highlight of his career. Now, another thing that Alice Walker is that makes her even more mesmerizing with her presentation is she forges a bond between the Black woman and Elvis Presley. Now, in the story, Elvis Presley is called, does anybody know who Elvis Presley is called in the story? Starts with a T. Traynor is his name, Traynor. I believe that's very symbolic because he was trained by this heavy gospel influence. But in the story also, Gracie May Still is the name of the Black woman. Now, what I will say with that is, Alice Walker, I cannot find any interviews to say exactly who Gracie May Still was other than being the name of someone that Alice Walker created. But here we have Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton, who's here. And then down here we have Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And now, if I'm not mistaken, in the movie, I believe Rosetta Tharpe is who is exposed as being an influence for Elvis Presley. But with the research that I've seen, both of these women were influencers of him. And then also you see Elvis Presley here with Mahalia Jackson and, forgive me, I cannot think of her name right now. It is Barbara McNair. And those were gospel singers as well. And of course, this is Alice Walker who wrote the short story. So in true Alice Walker fashion, she brings these characters to life. She chronicles the story of Elvis and his link to these Black women. And I just want to read a part of the story before I go into a spoken word that I have created based on what Alice Walker wrote. And it says, the car is a brand new red Thunderbird convertible, and it's passed the house more than once. It slows down real slow now and stops at the curb. An older gentleman dressed like a Baptist deacon gets out on the side near the house, and a young fellow who looks about 16 gets out on the driver's side. They are white, and I wonder, what in the world they doing in this neighborhood? Well, I say to JT, put your shirt on anyway, and let me clean these glasses off of the table. We had been watching the ball game on TV. I wasn't actually watching. I was sort of daydreaming with my foots up in JT's lap. I seen them coming up on the walk, brisk, like they coming to sell something, and then they rang the bell, and JT declined to put on a shirt, but instead disappeared into the bedroom where the other television is. I turned down the one in the living room. I figured I'd be rid of these two double quick and JT could come back on out. Are you Gracie May Still? Asked the old guy. When I opened the door and put my hand on the lock inside the screen, and I don't need to buy a thing, said I. What makes you think we're selling? He asked in that hearty southern way that makes my eyeballs ache. Well, one way or another, they're inside the house, and the first thing the young fellow does is raise the TV a couple of decibels. He's about 5'9", sort of womanish looking, with real dark white skin and a red pouting mouth. His hair is black and curly, and he looks like a Louisiana Creole. About one of your songs, says the deacon. He is maybe 60 with white hair and beard, white silk shirt, black linen suit, black tie, and black shoes. His cold gray eyes look like they're sweating. One of my songs. Traynor here just loves your songs, don't you, Traynor? He nudges Traynor with his elbow. Traynor blinks, says something I can't catch in a pitch I don't register. The boy learned to sing and dance living round you people out here in the country. Practically cut his teeth on you. Traynor looks up at me and bites his thumbnail. I laugh. Well, one way or another, they leave with my agreement that they can record one of my songs. The deacon writes me a check for $500. The boy grunts his awareness of the transaction, and I am laughing all over myself by the time I rejoin JT. Just as I'm snuggling down beside him, though, I hear the front door bell going off again. Forget his hat? Asks JT. I hope not, I say. The deacon stands there leaning on the doorframe, and once again I'm thinking of those sweaty-looking eyeballs of his. I wonder if sweat makes your eyeballs pink, because his sure are pink. Pink and gray, and it strikes me that nobody I'd care to know is behind them. Well, love it or not, I'd like to buy up all those records you made of the song. I tell you, we sure do love it. I'm not so stupid as to let them do that without making them pay. So I says, well, that's gonna cost you. Because really, that song never did sell all that good. So I was glad that they was going to buy it up. But on the other hand, them two listening to my song by themselves and nobody else getting to hear me sing it, give me a pause. Well, one way or another, the deacon showed me where I could come out ahead on any deal he had proposed so far. Didn't I give you $500, he asked? What white man, and don't even need to mention colored, would give you more? I'm going to buy up all your records of that particular song first, and you'll get the royalties. Let me ask you, how much you sell that song for in the first place? $50? $100? I say? And no royalties from it yet, right? Right. Well, when we buy up all of them records, you're going to get royalties, and that's going to make all them race record shops sit up and take notice of Gracie May Steele. Well, of course, it's a whole lot more, but just again, as far as the character analysis, that's the whole introduction to the story. Basically, the historical analysis of Elvis Presley and how we came to know him with his most popular song, Hound Dog. Now, again, true Alice Walker fashion, in the story, she never mentions that song because there's still mixed reviews, mixed research out there as to if that was actually the song. However, with Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton, she actually did record Hound Dog in 1952. And it is chronicled in certain places that a transaction was made to buy that song from her. However, Elvis was not the only entertainer that re-recorded that song. It was several more people. He was the one who really gave it fame. Okay? So, what we have is a writer who uses her authorial voice, as I like to say, to write history and to fill in the details that were probably left out. And before I actually read the spoken word, I just want to say that I decided to dress the part, okay? I went in my daughter's room. I have a 22-year-old who graduated from UNC Charlotte. I have a 19-year-old who's a junior at Fayetteville State. That's why I have on the Fayetteville State shirt. And I have a 16-year-old. Well, the 16-year-old, like Elvis, loves rings. So I said, hey, let me wear your rings. And then I thought, well, this blue Fayetteville State shirt matches my blue suede shoes, so I'll wear that. And of course, my hair, is going to be an Elvis impersonation as well. I don't know how to strum a guitar, but here is my contribution to tie up or put a bow on Alice Walker, Big Mama Thornton, Rosetta Tharpe, and Elvis Presley. And it's called The Backstory. The backstory, or should I say the black story. There was a black woman behind the young white man. Let us imagine that, if you can. One black woman was named Rosetta Tharpe, and she made the steel guitar sing while she strummed. The other was named Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton. She first recorded Hound Dog, while the audience screamed and rocked to the drums. Then along came Elvis Presley, who took the world by storm. He also took Hound Dog and made it his own. The world forgot about Big Mama Thornton and began to focus on the gyrating, peculiar-voiced, olive-skinned tone, bejeweled entertainer. Then along came Alice Walker. in her story, she made a bold choice in which she used her authorial voice. In Walker's world of the short story, 1955, the history could not have been plainer. Yes, Alice Walker used her authorial voice, and she used the literary elements of allusion, character analysis, and symbolism to fill in all the details. Alice Walker wrote 1955 and made it rife with literary elements. Alice Walker changed Elvis's name to Trainer, and rightly so, because he was trained on gospel roots. Rosetta Tharpe also dubbed Gracie May Still because she kept her stillness and her peace, while Elvis made millions off the original 1,000 that he paid Gracie May for that song. The guitar symbolized the blues. Elvis played it, and Rosetta Tharpe did too. Trainer symbolizes Elvis. Gracie May symbolized Big Mama Thornton and Rosetta Tharpe. JT and Horace symbolized the men in Rosetta Tharpe's life. The deacon symbolized Elvis's agent. Johnny Carson in the story symbolized Elvis's appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show. Alice Walker rewrote history the way it should have been done. As academics, we believe in giving credit where credit is due. Alice Walker is a true academic because she gave credit to the Black women behind the young white man in her short story, 1955. By doing so, she has kept history right, and she has kept it alive. She included the Black women that should have been recognized. She gave a voice to Big Mama Thornton. She gave a voice to Rosetta Tharpe. Alice Walker did not bark up the wrong tree. She wrote up the right tree of history, the right tree of a short story that gave voice to women like me. Thank you, Alice. Thank you all. So at this time, what I decided in true teacher fashion is we knew that we were going to tailor our presentation so that we could leave room for a little question and answer. So at this time, the floor is yours. The floor is yours. Yes.
So, I've done a little bit of history on women blues just because I've got a blues show, and one of the things that's always missing out of the narrative is the writer of the song, because this is one of the songs. So I guess I have a two-part question. For the most part, Lieber and Stoller have been credited with writing this song.
Hound Dog?
Yes, Hound Dog. I push back on that a little bit, and especially now that you mentioned Sister Rosetta Tharpe, it makes me wonder, was she the one who wrote that song before she turned to religious or gospel? Do you see what I'm saying? Because, I wanna say that, but then I draw back a little bit from that, because we know what happened behind the scenes when it came to Black women writers. It was either stolen or somehow they were manipulated out of their legacy of that. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, first of all, thank you for your contributions to, you said you have a blues show?
I do.
Outstanding. I'd love to hear it, about it afterwards, if you could give us the contact information. Now, again, in true Alice Walker fashion, she addresses that in 1955. The part that I didn't read in the introduction, when the deacon, the agent, and Trainer Trainer didn't talk much. It was the deacon that did the talking and set up the deal. So it was really the deacon and Gracie May Still. One thing that the deacon assured her of is, you will get the royalties, as he said. You'll get this $500, and then he ended up paying $500 more, so $1,000. And you will be credited with writing this song. So Now that is what Alice Walker put in there. And what Gracie May says as she's reflecting in the story is, thank you all so much for coming. Y'all, they have class. I remember those days. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it. One thing that Gracie May ponders is, yeah, I'll be credited as writing the song, but it'll just be on that spinning record and nobody will ever really see it. But still the credit was there. So there's some credit to be given to the credit. No, well, pun intended on the double use of that word. But the other part is with Willie Mae Thornton, who actually performed the song first. What I will say is, according to this source, which is the Washington Post, which is fairly credible, that song was written for Big Mama Thornton as well. And so therein lies the two, Lieber and who else? Stoller. Yeah. So I do believe that part of history is correct with what you said, that those were the two that wrote that even for her. And she became the face of the song until Elvis became the face of the song.
So that brings me to my other question, because looking at this picture of Sister Rosetta Tharpe and you said her name, and
Mahalia Jackson
Mahalia Jackson, sorry, and
Mary McNair. Barbara McNair.
Barbara McNair, yes. Seeing this photo, there's also a photo that floated around back when there was first noted attention that Elvis had taken that term, king of rock and roll. There was a photo that surfaced of him, Elvis Presley, in, I don't know if it's a studio, I would have to go back and look at the picture, with both Lieber and Stoller, however you pronounce their name. With them looking, it just seems so staged to me, and maybe that's me being a bit skeptical of it all, I don't know, but the photo is of them looking at sheet work, or a sheet, which you can only imagine is the song, right? So I mean, to me, I think, I don't know, there's so much behind it, and I'm always on the side of the women in history, which is why I love this, writing women back into history. It's I don't know, I'm still, I just think some way that was not that, but that other photo of them is kind of staged as a counter to the idea that we're coming into the truth about it. Maybe, I don't know.
Could be. And what I will say again, going back to something I said earlier, what I wished is that with the production of the movie, I wished that Alice Walker would have come out and said more about her premise for writing the story and where she got her information, and I'm still waiting for that. And because honestly, I mean, you know, in its plainest terms, since she's still alive, it could really still happen. Her birthday was last week or week before last, I believe. She turned 77, I believe. So she could still do that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, 1955 was actually written in 1981. The short story by Alice Walker. So I would not be surprised at all if that was a veiled attempt to sort of rewrite history and make it seem like this young budding artist, you know, wrote this, even probably wrote this song, you know, but we know now that he did give credit to some people behind him, and that's a good thing. Thanks for that question.
I can ask a question.
Yes.
So, for Tiana, okay, one is just a basic question. I have two questions. This is terrible.
Good. That's great.
So you have your chart up, or your slide up with black feminism, hip hop feminism, crunk feminism.
Yes.
And you're saying that, in a sense, this is part of I guess if you can educate me a little bit, if there are distinctions in the discourse, if it's exactly the same thing. I know you said each is kind of a different decade or decades,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
yeah,
It's
just tell me
kind
more.
of an evolution because, like I said, hip hop feminism builds off of black feminism. The edition of Chicken Heads that I have is published in 2017, so there was like a new interview in the back with Joan Morgan, and so she still does like refer to herself as a black feminist and a hip hop feminist. So when she was, you know, writing down these thoughts in Chicken Heads, she was just building upon everything. But for crunk feminism specifically, they it was Brittany Cooper, Robin Boylorn, and there's one other, I can't remember her name right now, but it was a group of them. They came together and they specifically made crunk feminism because they were not a part of that generation that came up during the original hip hop boom. So like the 90s and early 2000s, they came a little bit later. So they wanted a distinct feminism for themselves that kind of acknowledged like, hey, we weren't in the midst of the actual hip hop scene, but we still love hip hop and we still want to incorporate our feminism into this. So they talk a lot more about Nicki Minaj. They also go into like pop with like Beyonce and things of that nature. And so it's a really interesting read because they talk more so about the more modern rap and hip hop scene.
Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so second question, part of things. So I'm sure you're familiar with Ishmael Reed and the things that he has said about Sapphire's novel being a kind of problematic genre that exploits stereotypes for really a white audience's benefit. So I think, now, if we think of Ishmael Reed, he's anti-feminist and anti-black women writers who he sees as kind of exploiting issues for the benefit of entertainment, which of course those are both extremely problematic stances. But, you know, is there a way that you can contextualize for us Sapphire's novel that takes it back from that kind of accusation of, I don't know, that's not a very good question, but so just do what you want to do with it.
No, I actually hadn't heard that, but that is a common critique that I heard when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to read. It was this one series that my big cousin had, and it was all about like black kids in high school, and like one was like this girl, she got pregnant in high school, and there was one where the guy was in a gang. It wasn't Sharon Draper, but it was somebody else, and my grandma would not let me read it. She was like, you are not reading that, you don't need to see any of that. So I definitely like have heard that rhetoric, and all I have to say is like, it's reality. I think we should be portraying reality, and that we shouldn't, even though these stories do kind of portray the, I guess, black community in a bad light, we shouldn't ignore the truth, if that makes sense. Like, we can't control what, you know, other people are gonna say about us when they read these works. Like, that's just the risk that you take as an artist. But we still need to make this art and show this reality and, you know, give comfort to the people who are reading these books and actually going through these traumatic experiences, letting them know that they're not alone and that they do matter. Because like I said, a big part of Push was that hope. I felt like, even though it made me cry a lot, I cried like 15 times while reading it, but like a big message of Push was that hope. And so we have to put those stories out there. The good, the bad, and the ugly has to be, you know, visible for us to continue to have that hope. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would like to add to that, and when you gave when you presented the levels of feminism, and you came back to the levels of feminism, that made me think again about how, without, you know, trying to, our presentations are tied together, because in Intro to Critical Theory, when we got to the feminist theory, we learned about womanism through Alice Walker, because she felt that Black women didn't largely have a place in the feminist movement, and so she sought to make sure that Black women did have that place, and thus womanism was born. So I was glad to hear Black feminism, because I think that's essentially what she was trying to gain. And then, of course, hip-hop feminism, which to me, as someone who's knocking on the door of 50, when I hear hip-hop feminism, I'm thinking, okay, that's encompassing, you know, a generation or two younger than me and pulling them up, you know. And crunk feminism, I would think, would probably be my daughters, you know, 16, 19, you know, that sort of age. So thank you for that. And that brought back to my remembrance Intro to Critical Theory. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that the womanism aspect of it and making that connection with Alice Walker, because I do see some connections, you know, between push, you know, that self-definition angle, and Alice Walker's The Color Purple. So that's a very good connection that, you know, one can make there. So when I saw your list of feminisms, and I'm waiting to hear womanism. Yeah, but that's a good point indeed.
Yes.
And in the novel, they actually do read The Color Purple, and Precious actually like resonates strongly with that story. She sees herself within the trauma that Celie goes through, and so another connection to your presentation and to mine.
And then yet another connection is we've got Alice Walker, who is drawing the connections between the Black women behind Elvis Presley and the blues and jazz and gospel. And what is in Color Purple? The blues and jazz and gospel, when Suge Avery leads the pack with maybe God is trying to tell you something, and everybody just takes off and going, you know, just walks in masses, and it's a whole church service. So she definitely brings the musical piece in this short story, as well as the novel Color Purple as well, and I can see it coming through and push as well.
Even further connecting that, I won't go into any like theories or anything. I mean, I could, but I won't. Take too long. In The Color Purple, and Alice Walker just has this way of doing this. She does use the gospel, and I'm thinking of the gospel scene that you just mentioned, and the scene where she sings Miss Celie's blues. Sister, you've been on that
Sister,
song. That one. She uses both of those songs as a breakthrough for
Yes.
you know,
Great connection.
breakthrough.
As music is.
Yes.
You know, in any form, it presents a breakthrough. Yeah, that's very powerful.
Nice. Anyone else? We have another panel at 6, and that is a lovely discussion. I'm so glad there was this synergy between your talks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much. This was very delightful. Glad to be here. And now I see the woman behind the emails.
I hope they made sense.
Yes, they absolutely did. I'm looking forward to next year. Hopefully I'll be able to attend both days next year. This
wonderful.
is really nice. I really wish I could have been here yesterday as well, but
it's okay. I'll email everyone who participated this year and give them a save the date for next year.
Awesome.
Okay, so
Awesome.
you can have it on your calendar.
okay. Thank you so much.